We will now hear religious freedom as a stress test, public schools, student voices, and the Constitution from Dalia Taha. Dalia is policy manager at the Muslim Public Affairs Council, MPAC, where she leads the organization's work on First Amendment and civil liberties. She designs and oversees advocacy campaigns to defend free expression, oppose institutional censorship, and protect the rights of all Americans. Previously, Dalia was a project manager at the Texas A&M Foundation, researching maternal health disparities and developing policy solutions to address the U.S. maternal mortality crisis. Dalia holds dual bachelor's degrees in political science and education sciences from UC Irvine, and a master's in public service and public administration from Texas A&M University. Please welcome Dalia.
Hello everyone, my name is Dalia Taha. Thank you so much for the kind introduction. So I'm probably going to go a little bit quicker, and I speak really quickly, so if I start rambling, just let me know. My mind goes faster than my mouth can handle. So religious freedom is supposed to be America's first liberty, but in practice, it's a stress test. And nowhere in this test clear is our public schools. The promise of religious freedom means students should be able to pray, celebrate Eid, fast during Ramadan without penalty, or at least be given the accommodations. It should mean that history and contributions are reflected in the ethnic studies curriculum found in our K through 12's curriculum, but too often Muslim students are excluded from accommodations, from curriculum, and from belonging. And the numbers have been clear. Recent studies have shown that 50% of Muslim students report being bullied for their racial background and their identity. In the latest study, the Council on Islamic Relations said that these students feel unsafe, unwelcome, or uncomfortable at school simply because of their identity. And this isn't just discrimination, this is a constitutional failure. So during this talk of mine, I want to be able to discuss why these failures are typically ignored and pose 3 questions that I want everyone to have in mind is, what does that mean for our democracy? What's next when violations are treated as acceptable? And most urgently, who is next? At the Muslim Public Affairs Council, we see Islamophobia as the clearest stress test of America's constitutional practices. We've seen the cracks on college campuses, and I know this is about K through 12s in our public schools, but it would be doing a disservice to my community not to mention this, where our Muslim and our pro-Palestinian students are censored and punished. And I say this because we've seen how it translates to the violation of religious freedom in our First Amendment when 4 hijabis have their hijabs forcibly removed at Arizona State University for practicing their First Amendment right of freedom of assembly and freedom of religion. We've seen that happen, and if the universities can fail these students so easily, I pose the question, what does that mean for our K through 12s? And our students who can't defend themselves because they're little, our tiny humans, as I call them. So what's next if these violations creep into the earliest years of education? Legally, we know this is serious. Public schools are arms of the state. When they deny religious accommodations, silence students, or trivialize harassment, they aren't just failing young people, they're failing the First Amendment. We've seen this country's reflex before. After 9/11, Muslim children bore the brunt of fear and suspicion. Little boys named Osama had their names changed by terrified parents. Little girls were told to remove their hijabs, and little girls like myself were called terrorists. 6 years old, called a terrorist, in classrooms where they should have been safe. Governments fueled Islamophobia, spilled directly into our schools, and it scars us to this day. And if the First Amendment is conditional for our Muslim students, it is conditional for all children, not just Muslim children. My organization has seen this dynamic all too often. when Islamophobia is raised in meetings with elected officials, superintendent, board meetings, or even partner organizations, the room suddenly becomes quiet, it becomes uncomfortable. People shift in their seats, change the subject, or they brush it aside. I'll give you one example. In a meeting with a president of a major school board, I won't say who it was, I presented the data. Nearly half of the Muslim students in this school district reported feeling unsafe. Do you know what their response was? Can anyone guess? They said, and I quote, "We foster an inclusive environment. We brought in chocolate milk." Yeah. That was their response when we told them our hijabi girls, our little Muslim girls and men, were feeling unsafe, were being persecuted for their religion. We brought in chocolate milk and the kids loved it. And I tried not to think too much about it, but that kept me up at night. I was like, it's because chocolate milk is brown and we're a bunch of brown kids. But then I just like, let's not think too much into it. But yes, it's as bad as it sounds. We were dumbfounded. And the response tells us everything. When Muslim students are suffering, too many leaders minimize the problem instead of facing it. And if leaders can shrug off discrimination with chocolate milk, then what hope do those students really have for protection? And this is when it becomes a larger issue. As we've heard throughout this summit, this isn't isolated to just the Muslim community. But when Islamophobia is tolerated, it sets the blueprint for silencing everyone and anyone. Sikh and Hindu students have been mocked for their appearance. Jewish students scapegoated for global politics. Atheist students coerced into prayer. And all of our kids having the Bible and the Ten Commandments pushed upon them in these classrooms by Christian nationalists. And the pattern is always the same. Once one group's rights are dismissed, every group becomes vulnerable. And every time a school shrugs it off, the lesson students absorb is clear. Your rights depend on whether they inconvenience others. So let's talk about pluralism. Pluralism isn't just talking and discussing and tolerating differences, it's about protecting it. Too often, the government, our school systems, and third-party groups, they push to divide our communities. They tell us that the Muslim and the Jewish communities should be fearful of one another. They tell us that Jewish leaders don't want to sit at the table with us, to be scared of each other. And they decide which histories are told, which students are accommodated, and which students and whose voices are silenced. But the First Amendment was written to prevent exactly that. Religious freedom only works if it works for everyone, everywhere, all the time. As the rabbi yesterday mentioned, Palestinians, Jewish, Muslim students, and every single student throughout this country deserves to be represented and feel safe in the classroom. There is no if, and, or but to that. Every single student deserves to feel represented and safe. And to practice their faith without fear. And that is the baseline of what it means to be American. Pluralism means refusing to let fear or politics put communities against each other. It means standing together to ensure that every student, every child, regardless of where they come from, the religion or lack of religion, whatever they believe in, they have the right to feel safe, as I mentioned. So how do we fix this? I'm not here to just preach about it. It's how do we fix these solutions? What are the solutions to this? And how do we pass this stress test? How do we address these issues? First, by documenting violations and refusing to let them be trivialized, even if it's not your own community. If you hear about it, say something about it. Document it. If it's happening towards the Jewish community, reach out to local Jewish leaders and say, how can we help you? We're not Jewish, but how could we help you? If it's happening to Muslim students, reach out to local Muslim organizations. How do we assist you in these times and address this issue? Also, it's by training educators and administrators to uphold the rights with seriousness and not platitudes. Chocolate milk, believe it or not, does not fix the problem of Islamophobia. So there are tangible solutions that we should be actively working with these schools to address. As mentioned by many folks these last 2 days, prioritize state and local government and community organizing. The federal government is fancy. It's very, very shiny, and we want to be able to go in there. But if we only focus on that, nothing gets done because all of the work needs to be done from the ground up. And I'm saying that from experience. We see what happens when we address local issues, when we see state issues. We eventually see that go to the federal level, but if we nip it in the butt, informal language, I'm sorry, then we see that we stop it before it can go up. And most importantly, by building coalitions that understand that Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Hindu hate, anti-Sikh hate is not a side issue. If it happens to one of us, it happens to all of us. And it is a warning sign of constitutional failure. So what we're doing at the Muslim Public Affairs Council is we see how this has translated throughout the country, and we've seen how our community has been affected by it, and the violation of the First Amendment rights they love to violate Muslim students' First Amendment rights, so we created the First Amendment Center, a center focused on protecting freedom of liberty, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of press within our communities, but not just our communities, everyone's communities. We work with our allies, we work with other marginalized communities, and we work to coalition build to uphold the future. And as someone mentioned earlier, it's not about just the future, it's about the present, because young students should never be persecuted for their faith. And if schools can't protect our kids, who can? And lastly, I'm going to conclude with when Muslim students are otherized and their freedoms are dismissed, what does it mean for America's promises? What's next when this becomes the norm? When we go, it's just the Muslim community, whatever, it's not us. Who is next if we continue to stay silent? And the answer depends on what we choose to do right now. Protecting our students, and every single one of them is how we protect America's promise. Thank you.